Hey, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you guys are in the world. So good to see you. I've been out and about, and I've been on a sailing adventure in Maine. You might have seen some of my stuff on Instagram. It's there. Had a ton of fun. Got to get at the helm and steer this 48-foot piece of wood and steel, and it's kind of exhilarating to get out there, especially when it's really blowing and we were heeling over pretty far. I mean, you really have to trust that keel on the boat isn't going to let that big boat go over. Anyway, we had a ton of fun, took a lot of photographs, took a lot of videos. I've got a lot of editing I got to do in the next couple of days. I'm going to try to put that together and get that all put in ship shape. But, it's great to get out. It's great to get out and see the world. It's been a while, right? And do something completely different. Take your camera and get outside. Photograph. Well, how are you guys doing? Let us know who's here. I see some likes there, and like to see who's on the video right now and where you're from. And as always, be sure you ask your questions. We're going to be doing some processing. We have 4 images here from you guys, and we'll actually get into the processing here in a minute. So before we do that, let me just introduce myself. If you don't know who I am, I'm Marc Silber, photographer, author, educator in Carmel, California. And the show is brought to you by, let's just get over the right screen here, by our friends at Bay Photo Lab. They have specials, and right now they've got 30% off on exposures. Exposures are really cool. That's what I'm using behind me. This is an exposer here. It's actually printed, and you can see that it actually comes out from the wall. It's pretty cool. Bob Holmes uses those as well. And those are 30% off. I would grab one of those. You can get them in all sorts of different sizes. When you click on that link, it'll ask you what size you want, and you can just specify it. They're very easy to put up, and you can also change them out periodically if you want. Very cool. I'd recommend you guys getting one of those. And these are the thin wraps. This is another way to put your prints big on a wall without framing them. They also stand out from the wall. Those are very cool. I've used both of them. And as always, you'll get 25% off on your first order. So if you've been around AYP for any period of time, you know that I really believe in getting prints made. You got to get your work out to the world, and the easiest way to do that is to make prints, okay? So without further ado, let's dive in. I hope you guys are here because I'm going to be taking a look at your photos, and I'm only giving you what I see as a suggested edit. Of course, this is subject to what you want to do, but I'll go over this with you. And again, ask me your questions as we go along. So let's switch over here.
Oh, and we should make sure that people know to subscribe and like the video.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jared. Be sure to subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new episodes. And also, yes, if you would like the video, that's really helpful. It lets other people know that we're here. Sandy! Hey, good to see you all the way from India. Awesome. Always to have you with us. And who else is out there? Not too late to let us know. Okay, so let's dive in and take a look at this first image that I've got here. Jared, tell me how to pronounce his name.
That's good. I believe it's Moser.
Okay, Moser.
I'm not as good with Portuguese names, which I believe this is.
Okay, so
please
forgive us if we're
wrong.
If we're mispronouncing your name, please forgive us. But this, we believe it's Moser. Okay, so thank you for sending this over. Take a look at your histogram first of all. That's always a key point to start. You notice it's we're bunched over here. It's very dark on this side, so we'd like to kind of spread this out. that would be my first point. I'm going to get into the develop module here so that we're actually doing what we need to do here. So let's click over to develop, and it's taking a second to load it. So I want to, you can see we've got clipping highlights there on the darks, and let's just turn that off. So, you know, first thing you should always do with your own photograph is visualize it. And so I'm visualizing, I think this is a great image. I love the clouds, I love the water coming in, but we're losing a lot of that. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up the shadows. See how we do there. I don't want them too open, but I'm going to bring them probably to about here. Notice what's happening with the histogram as I'm doing that. It's, you know, if I open them all the way, I don't want to do that. You can see the change here. But we're making a more even hill if we bring it like that. And then I'm going to probably bring the highlights down a little bit, just because that'll bring out those clouds. So I don't know. I'm gonna do a little tweaking, and then I think we're going to go ahead and process this as a black and white. The reason why I would go with black and white here is I think it'll be more dramatic. There isn't a lot of what I would consider really important color. We've got the blue in the sky here, but the rest of it is pretty monochrome. So I think we're going to do better as a black and white. I'm going to enhance the blacks. I'm going to press down the Option key here on a Mac, or Alt on a PC. Just bring that over a little bit. We're going to lose, you can see we're losing information down here. It's not crucial. Do the same thing with the whites. Press my Alt key and open up the whites a little bit. Okay, well, there's a starting point. I feel like it still needs to open up a little bit on the exposure, so I'm going to just pop that a tiny bit, not too much. Okay. Now, I think I'm going to go in the direction of a black and white here. Let's just go ahead and edit in Silver Effects Pro. And let's see what we've got here as our options that we want to. Yes, we do want to edit it with Lightroom adjustments. I always do that because that's what we just did. We did those adjustments that wouldn't make sense to lose them. And let's let Silver Effects Pro open up here, and then we'll walk through what we can do with the image in Silver Effects Pro. And I'm not sure why it's being so slow this morning. Maybe it's not had its coffee. So back to Lightroom. There we go. Now it's loading it. Okay. All right, there we are. So we've just opened it in Silver Effects Pro. I haven't done anything. It's in neutral here. Not very exciting. I have my favorites here, so I'm going to click on them because I already know these are the ones I use 98% of the time. And then again, my workflow is just click through. I would never use that. I mean, that's just blasting the contrast out the roof, and that's losing all sorts of detail. That's no good. Let's see what high structure looks like. That might work. Let's just keep looking. So this is the process that I follow. This is also what Doton Sagai does. He just clicks through, and you just get a feel for, you know, what each of these presets can do. I think that's pretty cool. This has kind of become my go-to. This is Full Dynamic Harsh. That's number 15. I'm kind of going in that favor. Look what it's doing to the clouds here. Wow, amazing cloud structure. And let's just check the other two here I've got. No, I'm losing too much detail. I don't like that. And yeah, number 15. Boom. Okay. So I tend to, yeah, I think we're in pretty good shape just by doing that. You can see our histogram over here is already in better shape.
Actually, we can't quite see the histogram. You might need to move
okay, thanks for letting me know. Let's pull that over. Okay, let's do this. One thing you should do once you've Once you have determined which preset you want, then go ahead and close it, because now we don't need that showing up on the screen, and now I can move my screen over and give you a better idea. Okay, so you can see the histogram here. These are your zones, and that's zone 0 and that's zone 10. I don't have anything on those extreme zones, but you can start to see like zone 9. You can see the hash marks there, crosshairs, cross marks. I'm needing some coffee. I can't remember what those are called. Anyway, you can click over each zone, which is pretty cool. We don't have the 2 extreme zones. Let's see what happens as we keep working here. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to try a filter. If you've seen me process before, you know that I tend to favor the red filter for the sky here. I'm not sure. I think that's getting a little over processed. I'm going to go away from that. I'm probably going to leave all the filters off. I don't see any that I think will enhance this photograph. I'm just going to go back to no filter. I'm just testing the other ones. Certainly not a blue. Yeah. Let's just take the filter away. Yeah, I think we're better off. Do you guys agree? Okay. The other one that I always like to take a look at is what we're going to do in terms of, well, we'll go up here in a second, but let's just take a look at our films, because there's, sometimes it really can help adding a film look to it. So this is my friend Panatomic X. I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to stop there. Now, let's do a comparison. So we've got a side-by-side look. You can see where we started and where we are now. It's pretty dramatic. This is the bottom here. I think we're in good shape there. Now I'm going to just take this away because I'm not positive that I need that film look. Let's just go back to where we are. So that's without any of the films. Let's see what the difference is. Yeah, I think it's, it's kind of up in the air. Like, is that going to help or not? Yeah, I like that it's bringing in the blacks and it's giving us a stronger, more dramatic look. And because of the clouds being so dramatic, I think we're in good shape here. All right, what else am I going to do? There's little tweaks. Obviously, you can do this for a long period of time, and you should think about what tweaks you want to make in your photograph. One thing I am noticing is there's some sensor spots over here, so that should be processed out in Lightroom before we get to it. I'm not going to do that right now. Sometimes those show up, and it would be easier, obviously, to do that before we start adding the black and white. So the dynamic brightness is a pretty cool adjustment, because I can bring up the brightness in the image without sacrificing the darks and the lights. And I'm doing that just a tiny bit. I'm going to pull it down a little bit more. It's going to bring up sort of those midtones. And there we go. I really don't actually want to use that. I'm going to get rid of it. A lot of this, guys, is just trial and error. So what else are we going to do? We're just going to probably put a little toning on it. I'm going to use the selenium. That adds some bluishness, which also helps the dramatic look. And then the last thing I'm going to do is burn the edges. So probably one soft. I usually tend to go, so all edges 2. You can see how dark those edges are, the corner. I think it's a little too dark. If you haven't heard me talk about this, the reason you want to look at burning your edges or using a vignette is to keep the viewer's eye within the frame. So it's darkening it. It tends to keep your viewer looking into the frame, and it can often help. You don't always need it. I'm going to go one soft, leave it at that. Okay. There's other tinkering and whatnot we could do, but here's the before and after. pretty dramatic, right? I really like what it's done in terms of bringing out the clouds primarily. It's really enhanced that. But we've also got our texture going on with this sea grass here and the wave coming in. So I think that's really helped. Okay, so, this is your call. Always in terms of what you envision with your photograph, what you visualize, but I think it's definitely helped. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And
while that's applying, Nate had a question. Are you going to be sharpening photos? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I haven't done any sharpening, and that could certainly be done, and that should be done in Lightroom. Those are final tweaks that you could do before you could go, we're going to bring it back into Lightroom so we can do those final tweaks as far as sharpening. And obviously there's many different things you can do with a photograph. So here's your sharpening over here, and you could certainly always pull that over. Don't go crazy with it, but you can pull that over and get a little more sharpness going. So that's a good question, but I'm not particularly dealing with that right now. It's not something that's high on my priority list, but certainly everybody's got their sets of tools that they want to work with in terms of what they feel will enhance your their own image, and I think that's your discretion as your vision in terms of what you're seeing as the photographer. Okay, so were there any other questions, Jared, while we're tweaking around here?
Nope, that was that.
Okay.
The only question so far. And if you have any more, definitely leave them in the chat, and we'll get to them.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's just go back to our library here. And you can see what it's done is it's brought, I'll bring these up side by side so we can look at them together. And here was our original photograph, and here we are. I think it's really helped a lot, and I do believe that even though we're losing the blue there, I still feel like that tonality is present in the sky, and I think that really helps. We brought out a lot of detail here that wasn't really apparent in the texture. We've darkened the edges, and we've made it a very moody, dramatic photograph. All right, what do you guys think? Which one would you prefer? Let's take up the next one. So this one is also from Moiser, right? Am I right on that, Jared? Looks like it.
Yep, looks like it.
Well, Moiser, here's the thing. This, if we just look at our...
wait. So this one.
Oh, there we go. I didn't think that was right. Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking we only had one photo from.
It's being laggy. Okay, Pam. So thanks for sending us over, Pam.
Did respond to your edit because he is here in the chat, and thank you for being here. We love when you guys are here live. He said the black and white processing made the photo look better, so he agreed that black and white.
Okay, good.
For this one.
All right, and we'll send
it
over
to you. And Stan
also
agrees with that too.
All right, cool. Okay, so Pam, here's the problem. You've got, if you look at our histogram here, everything is completely bunched right over here. I don't know how much we're going to be able to salvage that, to be honest with you. Let's just see. Jared and I were talking about this before the show. There's this phrase, particularly in filmmaking, we'll handle that in post. You probably have heard that. And we were laughing about it because that's not always possible. Like if you mess up your audio, for instance, if you've got a fan going or there's a motorcycle outside or whatever, that audio is toast. There's only so much you can do. And, one of the things I learned early on as a digital photographer, I was actually working with Larry, who is the CEO of Bay Photo. He said, look, always expose for your best possible image. Now that may sound trite and obvious, but it's really what you want to be doing is exposing in your camera correctly and for the best possible image, because there's only so much we can do. I don't know how much we're going to be able to bring back out of this. I'm moving the shadows over, but we've got, we just don't have much range in this image. So I'm pulling the highlights. See, I can bring it up a little bit. I can bring up some of that, and it does help a little bit, but it's just, unfortunately, it's underexposed. So keep your eye on your own histogram in your camera before you press the shutter, or you can go ahead and expose, but you're going to want to use your exposure compensation. I use that dial continuously because your camera was probably exposing for the bright parts of this image right over here. And it was going, wow, okay, I'm going to shoot. The cloud was probably really bright, and it said, that's how I'm going to expose this thing. Well, okay, it's making a decision that isn't really the best for this photograph. So what you have to do as the photographer is compensate for that. And that's why you use your exposure compensation. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to do here. I'll just open up the whites and see if that helps a little bit. Yeah. Well, if I do that, I'm getting rid of I'm bringing up the bird, but I'm losing the clouds. So that does help a bit. And then, of course, the blacks. Let's just see what we're going to do there. I'll just pull that over a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. We've done a little bit of work there that's helping a bit. I'm kind of at a loss of what else I would do here. You've got some. You also got some sensor spots here. So clean your sensor. We can fix those obviously the way you fix a sensor spot is you just use your healing tool. Bam. And if you don't like that spot, you can move it around by just hitting this is the forward or the backslash key. This is something I learned from Scott Kelby on our show. So, it'll do its best to try to pick the spot. I think that's okay. There's another one over here. You got a number of them. So
Sandy mentions a tool called the spot meter that he says he likes to use in these kinds of sensor spot issues.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. Yeah, the best thing is just don't have sensor spots by keeping a clean sensor because it is annoying to go back and respot. But clean your sensor. It's really important. Also, the other thing about your sensor is don't open your lens to dust and dirt when you're out in the field. Bob Holmes talks about that. Because every time you change lenses, you're opening your camera and your sensor and exposing it to dust and dirt and that sort of thing. That's why you do not really want to be changing your lens in an environment like this where there's wind and dust and pollen and all sorts of stuff that could get on there. Anyway, that's our spotting there. We made a bit of an improvement, but again, it's going to be in your initial exposure. It just needed exposure compensation. But let's look at, before and after. Here's what we started with here. Oh, sorry. Come on. There we go. It's, it is definitely improved. We're bringing it up, but there's where we are. Okay. Composition-wise, I think it's very interesting, the two birds. This one on the bottom here, very cool, beak going on, and this one flying into the frame. You've got some points of interest here. I would just advise you to use your exposure compensation, take some more frames, just keep working on it. Okay, well, there's that one. Let's see what else we got here. Any other questions, Jared, while I'm moving around stuff?
No.
Okay.
I guess one thing I'd say is, I remember we did a project once where we had a very similar situation as far as, very crunched,
Yeah,
and it took a lot of work. We did fix it, but
it
it took
takes
a
a lot of
lot of
work.
work.
Yeah, get it right the first time.
Oh, and
Expose.
Sandy's saying he uses spot metering mode in his camera, so it'll
Yeah,
expose better,
yeah, for
and
sure.
won't just like highlight like, oh, they're really bright. Got to bring everything down now.
Yeah,
So
that's the best mode to go in, because otherwise the camera's going to make up its mind what it thinks you want to expose. But no matter what, look at your histogram in the camera and see what it's exposing. Okay, now this one from Jen, she's already processed. It's a great photograph. It's got incredibly vibrant
I don't know
colors.
that I don't think that this one's processed. I think she has processed it in
Oh, I
another.
see. Okay.
So
Well, you did a good job exposing this image. It's, look at our histogram here. It's in pretty good shape. I'm just going to do my normal steps. I'm not going to, well, let's see. Probably bring the highlights down a little bit. Just looking at that, oh, wow, okay. I'm just bringing them down a little bit just because this is pretty bright over here. And then the shadows, we don't really need to open anything, so I'm not going to mess with the shadows. Let's see what we can do as far as the whites, and opening that up a little bit, and the blacks, normal. I always just go to, those are my two go-to. I just always push those as far as I can. Overall, it's a little bit bright on the exposure. I'm going to just bring that down. Not too much, just a tiny bit. Remember this when you're moving sliders. I always liken it to seasoning. I like chili pepper, not chili pepper, but chili flakes. I put it on all sorts of things. I put it on salads. I put it on scrambled eggs, but you got to use it sparingly. But I think that, so what I've done is, if you just look at the before and after here, where my computer is running a little bit slow here and sluggish. We've got that spinning wheel, don't we always love?
it's recovering from the vacation.
Yeah, it's just asleep at the wheel here. Anyway, I've darkened it a little bit, which I think helps. Yeah, sorry guys, this just spinning wheel doesn't really cut it. I think you're in good shape here. I wouldn't make this into a black and white. There's too much vibrant color here. I wouldn't change that. By the way, one of the things you can do if you're trying to decide on a kind of a quick basis is, do I want this to be a black and white or not? And before you go to all the steps of processing it with Silver Effects Pro, just go up here and hit black and white. And we'll let Lightroom, I mean, that's terrible. Okay. No matter what, I wouldn't use that as my setting for Lightroom. But at least it gives you an idea. Is it going to be black and white or color? And there's no way you would want to turn that into a black and white. You're just losing all that incredible color there. So I think you've got a really good photograph. It's well exposed. You've focused on the eye. We always like to see the animal's eye dominant, because that's what people see. They connect with the eye, and that's in sharp focus there. We could sharpen it up even a little bit more, and that's not going to hurt. So I'm just going to pull the sharpening over a little bit. Okay. Go back to fit. There's all sorts of other things you can do. We might want to go ahead and do a little vignetting on this and just bring that your vignetting. The other thing is, I always like to do lens corrections. So I will enable these. I don't know if this is the right lens. It's just telling me that you shot it with a Sigma 150 to 600. Quite likely. If it isn't, you want to you want to fix that. And I'm going to vignette it a little bit just to darken the edges, and that's about it. Okay, Jen. Good work on, just really capturing this bird with its environment, keeping your shallow depth of field. Let's see what you have here on your. So what do we have? Okay, so that probably is. You shot it at. Okay, so let's critique this for a second. Hang on. I just want to critique your camera settings. So you were at 440 millimeters using a 1500 or 500, or what is that? Yeah, 150. Okay, 600. Got it. Okay, and you're at okay, so you're in a variable there. So f6. You've shot it at one. Okay, so you really made sure you're capturing the speed. Your ISO is up really high. You don't need to go that high. You could crank it down. Safe from, there's not a ton of noise here, but we always like to use the lowest ISO possible. So that would be the only thing, Jen. I would have, you could bring your shutter speed down quite a bit, bring the ISO down. But you know what? Those are just minor details, because really you do not have a noisy photograph. You've got a clean image, and work for you. Okay, good job. Good composition, straightforward. We're looking right at the bird. We're getting all that color. That's awesome. Okay, let's see who else we've got.
While you're bringing it up, Nate has another question for you. How long do you generally take to edit one photo?
Oh boy, there's no answer to that. There really isn't. It takes as long as it takes. I've done them, in milliseconds practically, where I just go bing, bing, bing. And sometimes you really have to work at it. It's a variable that just depends on each image and what you need to do with it, what you want to do with it, and the changes you feel that you need to make. If you're processing a black and white in Silver FX Pro, you might spend an hour on it, tweaking different things and going over, how you want. I didn't, in Silver FX Pro, you didn't see me do anything as far as local adjustments, that sort of thing. So you could spend a lot of time. Just by comparison, in the darkroom, we used to spend hours and hours on a single image. So don't try to rush by it. Okay, John, so you're doing some cool double exposures going on here. And I'm assuming, since this is a raw image, that this is all done in camera. Let's see what you're doing here. I'm just trying to kind of reconstruct. Okay, so you have a zoom of a 40 to 150 Olympus. So those are your two different images, one zoomed in, one zoomed out. Your ISO is cranked up pretty high because you're in a dark environment where this person is playing the clarinet. And you kept a very shallow depth of field, so yeah, you couldn't have done much more than that. You're at a 40th of a second, so there's not really much you could do about that ISO. It's fine. We don't have a lot of noise. There's a little bit you can fix. John, I don't have a lot of things that I'm going to do here. I really don't. I'm going to just do my standard tweaking, and let's see if I can bring up the blacks a little bit. We'll watch. I don't mind this getting clipped here because that's already black. Looking at the histogram, it's pretty even there. Let's see what we can do as far as the whites. I'll just bring those over a little bit. I can go a little bit there. Again, this is just from my preference as a photographer. I want to see the widest dynamic range that I can get. And what else am I going to do, John? You've done a good job with your exposure as far as both of those shots are within the bounds of where we want to see an image. It's already the edges are pretty burnt, so we're not going to really change anything there. I don't think I want to change the exposure, maybe a little bit. Tiny bit. It's almost not worth changing anything. Yeah, John, if I start messing with the exposure, it just does weird things. I think just a tiny bit. Let's just see what happens if I play with the highlights. Maybe I'm going to bring those up just a little bit. Again, that's the kind of a micro adjustment. Sometimes you don't even see the difference, but maybe it just helps a little bit. As far as bringing up the shadows, I don't see that. Yeah, I think we're good. Good job, John. And I like your double exposure that you've been using that in your recent photographs. I always go down here and click on these two because it's going to help keep the photograph from being distorted and also enable this remove chromatic aberration. That's what happens with certain lenses. Sometimes you get an aberration where you get pixels that are clumped together, and this will help you sort that out. I don't know. So you would want to go ahead and, we know it's an Olympus, and for some reason it's not showing up in my list there. Anyway, we'd have to add that profile in. It's not a big deal. Okay.
I think for the shadows, it didn't quite go back. You might want to go back.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jared.
And check that. When you double-clicked it didn't quite fully reset.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
And while I'm up, Nate was also wondering about, do you ever change contrast or clarity? I know that you have some things to say about clarity.
Yeah, I tend to not use the contrast slider because it's so global that I think it's too extreme. It used to be one of my favorite go-to things. I'd always up the contrast. Clarity I use sparingly. It is mid-tone contrast. Now here's what's going to happen. By the way, the easiest thing when you're moving your sliders is move them to extreme so you can see what's going on. So clarity tends to bring in a kind of a muddiness to the photograph. If I slide it all the way over there, we start losing detail, which can be helpful if you have somebody with wrinkles and they say, can you help me get rid of my wrinkles? You can move your clarity slider over. I'm going to move it just a tiny bit. Texture, I just don't see these being a key part of this image. I don't feel like that's going to change in an improvement in terms of this image. So I'm not really messing with those sliders to answer your question. Do I use them all the time? But it's just, there's dehaze, which is another mid-tone contrast. But in this image, I don't see that these sliders are really going to help. I don't really feel like I might just leave the clarity over there a tiny bit. It's kind of like you do that and you kind of wonder why, is that even important? Now, one thing I may do here, John, there's, this is pretty highlighted. So I may do a little local adjustment on just this. This is like part of the microphone. And just so my eye doesn't kind of go to it, I'm going to just pull the exposure down and just pull it down a little bit. Okay. And actually just pull the highlights down on it. Let's just see if it's, yeah. I would want to tweak that a little bit, but you always, when I do this with local adjustment, I always want to do a mask overlay so I can kind of see what's going on here. And the exposure, obviously I don't want to mess with it too much because it's going to start giving us a kind of an exaggerated exposure on that particular spot. I don't want to do that. So, but I did bring it down a little bit as far as just the glare of that particular spot. Obviously, that's not what I want. Okay, let's go back to our exposure. I pulled it, made it too dark. My computer is being very sluggish. I don't know why. It's just sleepy. Anyway, you would
Should
want
have gotten it coffee too.
I know it needs coffee. It's just running so behind here. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to just get rid of that. Yeah, see how it's like in slow motion. I would play around with this a little bit, John. That's the only thing I would change there. Just to keep your eye going. I mean, it's really cool with the clarinet. I think you've done a fantastic job of capturing these two exposures and having them work together in the frame. How you've got her head here is not intruding. The two heads are not kind of bumping into each other. So that works really well. And the two clarinets are parallel. They're side by side, so they don't kind of bump into each other. I think that worked really well. Okay, well, I didn't do too much on that one, but those are just little tweaks. Again, keep in mind, sometimes little tweaks are all that you need. Okay, before we end off here, Jared, are there any questions or comments we had to take up?
No, I think we're good. We got a lot of good questions on this one, so hope we answered them all for you.
Thank you, guys.
John was just suggesting as what he might look into is like a heel repair tool to maybe like even smooth over the whole thing together. So
yeah, you could do that. I mean, it's your vision, and back in the darkroom days, we could work on a print for days even, just because you want to get it just the way you want, and that's the whole point of processing. So the beauty with our modern digital age is you can do that quickly, and you can make changes and go back and forth until you got it the way you want it. So I guess summarizing, what did we end up looking at here? We did one black and white conversion. I think that worked really well. Are we still seeing this screen? Sorry.
No.
Okay. Yeah, here we go. Now you see it, right? So we did a black and white conversion here. Are you seeing that? Okay, yeah, there we are. Okay, so we did this black and white conversion, and I think that worked out really well. We did a little work on the on this bird. We did bring it up, and we did pull it back, and we fixed some of the exposure. There's hardly anything I did here with this bird, maybe just minor tweaks, and same thing with John. That means you guys did a really good job with your exposure to begin with. Okay, well, thank you guys for joining us, and listen, remember processing is you've got your stages of photography. The first is your visualization, and that covers the entire scope of from the moment you think about the photograph all the way through to the end. You visualize. You got to know your equipment, and that's exposure compensation is one of your tools. It's a key tool. Your histogram is another key tool. Use those constantly. And then your processing, or capture rather, where we're basically looking at composition and lighting. Processing is the fourth stage, and then getting your work out to the world. Get some prints made. Okay, we use Bay Photo. Get some prints made. Put them in books. Highlight them. Get them out to the world. Okay, well, that's about it, you guys, for today. Thanks for joining us. And as always, well, let's remember this. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our episodes. And as always, like, subscribe, leave your comments. We love to see your comments. If you see this later, go ahead and leave a comment. We'll always read them. And last but not least, remember to get out and capture your own images of life. Take care, you guys. Stay well, stay safe, stay creative. And we'll see you next week.